Last Friday's settlement with Sixties Scoop adoptees had a noticeable exception: non-status and Métis people. The outrage over Métis being excluded has been vocal and disappointed, especially on social media. But so far, Métis leadership has been somewhat silent. David Chartrand, president of the Manitoba Metis Federation, joins me now in studio to change that. President Chartrand, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, Dennis.
What is the Métis position on the settlement?
Well, in fact, we weren't silent. We were actually in dialogue and contacting the Government of Canada, expressing our clear disappointment and quite strong statement in the sense of being again left out. This is not only the first time. You go back in reflection history, Canada left us out in 1870 in the land claims. And again in 1960 they did that to us as children. They left our children out and took most of our children, sold them. I use the word sold because it was a cost saving for Canada to give them away to the United States and other countries. And again in 2017 we're being abandoned by Canada and the children are being left out. So from our standpoint, there's a letter actually being drafted by me today. It's going out to both Minister Bennett and Minister Philippot, expressing our clear unhappiness, and clearly I'm trying to find a word that doesn't get too hostile, but in the sense of making it very clear there is going to be action from our government. We're looking at, obviously, this is a human rights issue, just in the systemic discrimination. If I go back in 1870, 1916, 2017, there's a clear indication that Canada has abandoned Métis people. Now, we thought this would all be settled in Daniels. Daniels was supposed to be the closure of all this, that Canada had now been told that Métis were in a jurisdictional wasteland. There was collateral damage that has gone on for generations, and it's time that Métis be treated differently in this country. But obviously, somebody's not reading their legal findings in the Supreme Court of Canada, and at the same time, I think these politicians need a wake-up call, and they're going to get one from the Métis Nation, I assure you that.
President Chartrand, the explanation for the exclusion is that Métis weren't identified as such at the time children were being scooped up. How much of that argument do you accept or not?
That's absolutely bogus, because the Métis Federation, in fact, I was a minister at one time in child welfare before I became president years ago, and we ourselves in the late 80s and early 90s did our own repatriation program. We did it through fundraising, raising our own money, and we found hundreds of Métis people in the United States, and well, now they're adults, and we found them because they were given away as children. But we still have finding them today as we speak right now. And so for us to find them with just bake sales and raffles, and they have abundance of money and resources, that is absolutely bogus. That is a poor argument. This is not about jurisdictional issue for me. It's clearly, this is a Canadian issue. Our country's abandoned the Métis children and the Métis families, and we're going to hold them accountable, and we'll take every action necessary, whether it's through the human rights, whether it's through political, whether it's through legal. But there will be action coming to Métis. The days of the forgotten people are over, and we'll be making it very clear to this country. And I cannot believe, if that's the argument they're going to use, that they can't find, because we can find them. I don't know why they can't find them, and I can give them a list of names and names and names and names and families and families. We're actually dealing with one family right now, figuring out how we get the reconnection of the family here in Canada, and they're afraid to come across because of the Trump policies, and they're afraid to actually come, and they may not be able to go back. Because they are connected now with that new family in the United States, but they've come down once, and they had a difficult time going back home. So we're working with that family, and we're still finding, as I speak today, we're still finding these, and on our own dime, we're raising our own money, but it's not our responsibility. Canada's the one that robbed our families, robbed our children. They're the ones that went into our homes, snatched them right off the arms of our parents, and sold them to the United States. So they're going to be held accountable to this, and I cannot believe the times of reconciliation, government to government, nation to nation, that this is the position they take in this country and this government. It shocks me as a leader, especially the message that we're getting from Prime Minister Trudeau. There's something truly wrong, inconsistent with the message of the Prime Minister and the Department's actions today.
President Chartrand, as you're aware, on social media there's a lot of Métis adoptees angry, confused, and wondering why. It's been about a week here since speaking out. What can you and the Métis National Council do to lessen their confusion and some of that anger out there?
Well, to make it sure that we're going to be, again, as I said, taking political legal action. I did raise it with the Prime Minister. In fact, before this announcement was made, We did not know about this announcement. That's another clear insult, in our view, by Canada, that they announced it after the First Minister's meeting. During the discussion I had with the Prime Minister in the private session we had, I did raise the 60 Scoop with him, advising that the Métis cannot be left out, and to assure us that, you know, it's got to be clear that we need to sit down and establish how we will be dealing with the Métis people. So after that meeting, several days later, this announcement comes without us even knowing it. So I'm not even sure he knew. I'm sure he knows the announcement was coming, but I was quite surprised that he didn't address it or talk to me during that time I raised it at the First Minister's meeting. So from our perspective, again, it's clear this government is failing the Métis people, and definitely the hardest part of it is failing the children, and that there's enough. I've had so many of those interviews. I was sitting there when we repatriated a lot of these children, and when they came back as adults, the horror stories we heard. There's a few, some good stories, but the majority of all stories were quite saddened. They felt like they were slaves. You know, some of them were telling me, like, in the middle of the night, they'd get up when they were children and start crying, and they didn't know what they were crying for. They said, we didn't know what we were crying, but we were crying. In the middle of the night, we'd wake up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd get help from our adoptive parents, but we were crying because we felt something was missing, and we didn't know what that is. And I think now we know, and this is how they're telling us when they're adults coming home now when we find them. And so story after story after story, and a lot of them felt that they were just taken as by American families to be slaves on their farms. And a lot of them were physical violence that was taken against them, and a lot of them were told that their parents had abandoned them. A lot of them were told that their parents were dead. That's why they were now living with this family. So it goes on, and I was sitting there in these interviews, and so I know firsthand we found them. And I'm sure that Canada, it's a sad day in this country that our country can say they don't know how to find the Métis people and find out where they are and who these children are, because we'll give them a list tomorrow morning if they want one.
Sorry, President Chartrand, we're going to have to hold you there, but appreciate you taking the time to join us to speak about this today.
Thank you very much, Dennis.